All right, good afternoon, folks. I am Tina Nguyen, and I am your room host for today. Just a couple of housekeeping items, and then I'll bring the presenters up on stage. So emergency exits are in the back where you came through, and then the bathrooms are also through those back doors. Just take a right when you head out. If you have not downloaded the AWS Events app, please take time to do that now through the App Store and at the end of the session so that you can share your feedback. We always value your feedback there. And then also please take a moment to silence all your devices. Last but not least, the AWS session that you see today will be recorded and will be available a couple weeks after the event. So for this session, Delivering Inclusive World-Class Museum Experiences, please welcome to the stage Elaine Liu, Carl Ward, and Mohammed Hardy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to see you here. In fact, after the 2 years and now, I'm so happy to see so many people face to face. And I hope you have enjoyed the keynotes in the morning and the various sessions. And today, welcome to the session. Thank you for coming here. This is a breakout titled Delivering Inclusive World-Class Museum Experiences. Today, together with me on stage is Carl Ward, our Director of Solution Architect at AWS. And he will share how cloud can be an enabling technology transforming how we work and live. He would also share with you the true value of cloud and benefits. Next, we're so delighted to have Hardy, Mr. Mohammed Hardy, Director and Chief Information Officer of National Heritage Board. He will talk about how the digitalization can help increase the reach beyond physical boundaries of museum and heritage institutions. It is important to listen to these use cases and think about how you can harness the power of technology. Without further ado, let me invite Carl.
So thank you, Elaine, and very pleased to join you and present today. So I'd like to start with a discussion on essentially what is digital transformation. And this sets the context for how we believe in providing transformation, supporting transformation. So there's really two kind of foundational components to digital transformation in my view. One is about reinventing business models. And I'll give an example of what this means is in the UK, there's a program called Universal Credit, which essentially provides welfare payments or welfare support to those people most in need. The UK went through a big transformation for Universal Credit over the last decade or so, where they changed over 100 different policies to 8 simpler policies, all of which were implemented as part of a new foundational system on AWS Cloud. That is a reinvention of the business model that the Department of Work and Pensions in the UK was using to provide its services to the community. So that's an example of where we can change the way we do our work. And when we think about cloud, it's not just about migrating workloads and doing the same thing on cloud. It's about the ability to change and adapt, and I'll touch on that more in a second. The second thing that comes out of digital transformation is really a real focus on customer experience. This has been a wave that we've seen over the last decade where we've gone from computing being the constraint that we as people had to adapt to the way in which our computers worked to an era where computers adapt to us. And that reinvention of that customer experience is changing the way we can interact with environments. It's changing the way we can interact with our systems. And I'll give one quick example from New Zealand where when you had a baby in New Zealand maybe 5 years ago, what used to happen is you had to register that birth with multiple different organizations. Now what happens is they thought about, well, how do I change this? How do I simplify this process? One easy way would have been to say, let's have one form. You fill that one form in and submit that, and it then sends the data to those different agencies. But they took it a step further. They thought most babies are born in a hospital. The hospital already has all the information we need. Why can't we just ask the hospital for the information instead? Takes away the burden off the citizen from interacting with government, and it's what's termed, what would I term a natural system. So you're leveraging the interactions that you have already with other organizations to satisfy government obligations or compliance activities. So that's an example where we can change the way the experience is being provided as part of that digital transformation. So let me move on to kind of touch about, so why is cloud able to support this? So when AWS invented cloud, back in the early 2000s, its focus wasn't on providing infrastructure as a service. Its focus was on finding that the way in which they had managed the applications and the workloads that they had was not meeting the requirements of the Amazon business. And that led to the creation of the business we now know as Amazon Web Services. There's three key characteristics that I believe are important in driving that value. Firstly is agility. And when I say agility here, we're really thinking about what is business agility. How do I allow changes to occur? And over the last 2 years, we've seen organizations and people have to adapt to a new way of working, a new way of living as we lived through the pandemic. And those organizations who were more agile were able to respond to that change better. So agility, from my point of view, business agility is a really important feature that we need to build into how we think about ourselves, our organizations, and even our countries to be able to respond more quickly to change. And with agility, once you have agility, that enables innovation. So with the ability to change, you can start to think about, well, I can experiment, I can create new ways of doing things, I can find new opportunities to drive value. So we can see opportunities coming out of how innovation is applied through either, again, thinking about new business models through customer transformation or new business models through business transformation. There's a great example from Korea that we did with perilla leaf farming. So perilla leaves are a staple diet in Korea, and we worked with an organization in the farming community to work out how do we increase the productivity of the perilla leaf farmers using AI and using machine learning intelligence. We were able to basically increase the productivity by 5% of those leaves by telling the farmers when to open the windows within the greenhouse, when to provide water, what other things they needed to do, which improved productivity of the farmers and improved the yield that was coming out of those perilla leaves. So that's a great example of how artificial intelligence can apply in an innovative way to how we can drive growth, support farming in the community. The third area I'll touch on is operational excellence. So my belief is if you do something, you have to do it well. It's a key feature of how Amazon thinks about its services, and built into that operational excellence is a philosophy of always improving, always focusing on continuous improvement to make sure things are done the best possible way. As people and as organizations, we also need to think about how are we going to be operationally efficient? How are we going to make sure that we can provide service to our communities and citizens in the best possible way? And that's where this philosophy of doing things well is delivering that service. So AWS Cloud supports operational efficiency by essentially taking away a lot of the complications you would need to deal with when dealing with infrastructure, because we provide that. I was in a session this morning talking about security, so we were demonstrating essentially how the way in which Amazon and Amazon Web Services deals with security takes away a lot of those challenges, a lot of those problems, so you don't have to worry so much about those. I'll touch on one extra point which I haven't written down, which is you will get cost savings from running on cloud. But the key thing is you have to go through a modernization journey to really drive the benefits. So it's not enough just to lift and shift a workload and put it on cloud. You don't get agility or necessarily the operational resilience or the ability to innovate if you simply do what you're doing on premise and do the same thing on cloud. you need to think about taking advantage of cloud-native services and driving additional features through that. So we are, as a consequence of that, we operate 2 to 3 times more efficiently than on-premise infrastructure, which has then the added benefit of being more sustainable. So I'll lead on to kind of what are we thinking now about innovation at the edge. So how can we use technology to enable innovation and how that works. So when we've started thinking about edge computing and how edge is driving this, we've had 15 years of working with infrastructure which is regionally operated, been located in big centers, and has supported a vast e-commerce transformation around the world. Well, we're now getting to a point now where customers are looking at latency problems. So, for example, there are gaming customers that want to know, can I run my gaming system so I can actually keep the interaction with my gamers very rapid and very responsive. I don't need to rely on the latency back to the region. And things like smart city and smart buildings also rely on that capability to be able to do that. So if you do have a latency problem, or you're trying to control devices on the edge, you're trying to either control buildings or control machinery, then we do provide the capability to put computing at the edge in the same way as we have it on the region to essentially provide that service. But taking that beyond this from a public sector point of view, there are opportunities around what I term constrained environments. And this is probably the best starting point for where we see smart application of technology at the edge occurring. A constrained environment would be anything from a airport to a transit center to we'll talk about museums later, to campuses and to hospitals, where you can apply technology within that constrained environment using a whole range of different devices and technology to support the transformation. So delivering medicine to people's beds through robots, or guiding people who are disabled through a transit center so they know where to go. There's great opportunity using smart technology in a very human interactive way as part of the constrained environment. And once we've gone through that, we then can move on to this next wave of what is a digital city and how do we enable that. And I believe at the moment we're still really at the early stages of thinking about what a digital transformation might mean to the way we operate in cities. We've seen specific use cases, vertical use cases applied to smart cities, but we have yet to kind of get over that hurdle of how do I transform and change the way I do things in the city to do things that are beneficial to society. And this is a focus, I think, on thinking about digital public infrastructure. We've thought about things like electricity and roads and drains and the like as public infrastructure which is provided by governments, by cities to support people living in that city. Improves their quality of life, means they can get to work, improves logistics around where the city is. But we haven't yet gone to the level of thinking, what is that same infrastructure in the digital world? So what's the digital equivalent? Now here in Singapore we have the example of SingPass, which is a strong identity which provides authentication of identity in that digital world. So we need to think of other opportunities that we can build on to create a digital public infrastructure that will create the cities of the future. So with that, let me hand on to Elaine to kind of explain a little bit about what sort of technologies does AWS have to support these transformations I've talked about.
Sure. Again, as you know, I, at AWS, is leading the hybrid edge computing business at AWS. So we heard from Carl, he was talking about edge computing. Maybe a question to the floor. How many of you have heard about the word edge computing? Show of hands. Wow, quite a lot. So you think about it, really. We listen to our customers. We believe that most of the workload and your application are running on the cloud or will run on the cloud. But there are situations of the business application that need to stay on-premise, right? Or at the edge, where the operations are or where the end users are operating. So what do? Do you not stop the cloud transformation and the innovation? No, you don't stop. So we listen to our customers, and we're now extending AWS cloud infrastructure and services to anywhere you need to a broad range of location. At your office, data center location of your choice, or a remote location, or an area that is far away from our parent region. So what do? We bring the computing power closer to where you are. So the first service that we have is AWS Local Zones. It is a set of infrastructure with compute, storage, database, and set of services that we place close to where you are. Beginning of this year, we have announced AWS Local Zones in Asia Pacific, including 3 countries in ASEAN. That is Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. What that means is when you have application running on the AWS Local Zones, you can drive low latency. And what does low latency really mean? Improved performance, have huge amount of local data processing at faster pace, and not losing sight of critical business decisions that you need to make from the data that you collected. Now, sometimes we hear that customers say, well, I want to run my workload in my data center. Yes, on-premise, we have AWS Outposts. AWS Outposts is like example of a physical rack I ship from the AWS region to your office and to your data center. Seamless control plane and set of services, so you only need to develop your cloud once, and you have a choice to deploy on-premise as well. Now, last but not least, Carl talked about locations where there are rugged and intermittent or limited connectivity. And even in the museum, Hardy doesn't run a data center. So what do? A set of edge services that allow you to run in these remote and rugged locations. We have one family called the Snow. The Snow, Cone, and Snowball help you with 2 use cases. One is data migration of your data that you're transporting to the cloud, and the second use case is edge computing. We hear from our customers, some of the examples of edge computing requirements stem from the acceleration and adoption of IoT Hub in processing sensor data, video analytics, and many more. So with that, the edge services that's bringing closer to you will bring performance and gain productivity. Now, I'm not going to go on and keep talking about AWS services because the key highlight today is Hardy. Let's hear from Hardy now. How is he having that vision and the execution to bring forward an inclusive and world-class museum experiences? Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much, Elaine. And thanks, Carl, for that quick round of introductions. So my name's Hardy. I'm actually from the Network Heritage Board. First thing again, always my spiel. If you have not visited our museums, please do so after this. So to share with you exactly, I'm just going to move to the next slide. Yep, that's mine. To share with you, I think 3 takeaways that Elaine has mentioned, which us in the heritage sector has taken a very key decision when we decide to move to the cloud. One, the edge is very important for us because if you know our museums, we tend to actually put our servers in every single exhibition. There's a lot of support costs. There's a lot of old traditional way of doing it. Cybersecurity has actually gone up. The risk has gone up. So we had to find a way how to find the best solution out there, but at minimal cost. At the same thing, looking at low latency. Low latency is something that's very useful for those of you who've got your 5G headsets or handsets, or even the new toys that you have, your new tablets. With that low latency allows us to move interactivity directly into your hands. And that's something that we want to do, especially coming from a museum, especially in Singapore, where we are still far behind our competitors. And the last thing I would like to share, very importantly, is how you move your data. Now, I think Elaine mentioned Snow. Those are very good tools. When we are looking at our national collection we have about 300,000 artifacts. When we are migrating our collection systems out, and we're going to do this over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to find a way how to move that data, and things like Snow makes very big sense for us to be able to do so. Now again, that's really me telling you. Let me share with you what we've done. Over the last 2 years, when COVID was new and everybody was sitting at home watching your TVs, doing your remote meetings and stuff, we went through a 2-year digitalization journey. Our journey was 5 years, but the last 2 years was how we got to the cloud. So what were our goals? let me share that with you. Really, I think for heritage and culture, it's really to inspire. When you're at home, you can't get out. What do? You either turn on your TV, you go onto your laptop, or you look at programs on YouTube, social media, TikTok. And this is really what we've done. What we've done today when we look at COVID, we look at how we can digitalize and use it as a very powerful tool to engage our visitors, both in the museums and of course at home. And what we have built also is what we call the phygital experience. It's really allowing you to enjoy that over your devices. And also at the same time, because when you want to offer content, both for you who are actually in Singapore or overseas, we want to go locally and beyond borders. And that can be done only if you're looking at the digital realm. And of course, one of the things that we also wanted to do is to see how can we bring content to you. I think most of you would know, if you've gone to the museums, you most probably have done it once in a very long time, or most probably have not gone there too, right? Why? That's because you have to take that journey to the museum to be able to experience it. What we have done with COVID was to bring that museum experience to you at home. Now, we don't actually put all the content in place, the necessary ones, such that you can enjoy it, you can appreciate, but at the same time, when it was safe to go out again, like now, you can now come to the museums in person. And that's important because when we do that, you have two things that we focus on. One, we use our digital assets. What are those? Digital assets are really information about you as the visitor, as well as some of all the digital assets that you get. You guys are familiar with NFTs, images, 3D and stuff. And those are, to us, are digital assets in which how we can use to bring this digital experience forward. So if you look at it, what's our goal? Well, what do we do with this? Really, with the content and collections perspective, what we want to do is to reach out to a more targeted and larger audience. And that's really giving us, as you know today in Singapore, majority of you guys who are still in Singapore are coming from the local population, citizens. And to do that, how can we work on a digital first policy so that we can address that, use digital in the way how we present content, and also to have an open access policy to get more people to come and access our content, both digitally and physically. Now, when we provide access, what we also want to do is, in Singapore, we have 300,000 artifacts. Bear in mind, in the Smithsonian, there are 1.2 million. It means that Singapore is 1/4 the size of the United States in terms of asset, but most of it are under storage. What we want to do next is to be able to give you the ability to enjoy this. So to do that, what we also looked was how we can put in that AI and the human experience. When you experience content, you want to do it both in person and digital. We want to give you that NX experience before you come to the museum, while you're there, and also when you go back. Importantly, the content as well as the research that we have today, we want it to be made available online at any time. So let me give you an example. This is the Old New World. For those of you who have been to the museums, you will know that we've actually digitized it. This runs on a cloud. And the reason we have done this is because during the COVID period, we wanted to make sure that our visitors do not miss out on the same experience that you get in the museum. Right? Interestingly, in the National Museum, you find that we do have permanent as well as normal exhibitions, special exhibitions. And some of these things are very interesting. And importantly, how do we bring the content to the person? We actually use a fair bit of technology. And as what I think Elaine and Carl have mentioned, the use of digital is actually very useful by having the right tool and having the right environment. Let me share with you something else. This is the Heritage Hunter. For those of you who have gone to the Bras Basah Bugis district, or, well, Sultan Mosque, for those of you who are not familiar, we actually have digitalized this and built it into a digital world as part of the National Innovation Challenge. Kids play games, they use AR, VR. We digitize our galleries to give you that experience. So you can actually come in, go physically on the ground and experience it, or do it online. And these are some of the things that we also give you some of the artifacts or some of the experiences that you normally don't get. With gamification itself, how do we bring it to the customer? We obviously do it with having the data on the cloud, being able to utilize very high good compute power to be able to use this rendering and to give it the ability to be deployed very quickly to all users. So I think one of the most important things that you see, especially when you look at gamification, for those of you who have actually played Pokemon, we work on the same basis, right? So gamification gives us the ability to enjoy ourselves. For those of you who have been to the museum recently, we also have an escape room game for this technology showcase that we had, which we also put in tech that runs off the cloud to be able to give people that unique experience for a fee. And importantly, what it does is it allows you to deploy a lot of some of these experiences very quickly without having to build. This actual exhibition took us, I think, like 6 months to build, something that's very short. So, for those of you, again, this year have been to a Heritage Festival in May. We actually have put in about a total of 120 in-person experiences and also a fair bit of online experiences, all hosted on the cloud. But then again, for those of you who have been to our night festival, just recently before the F1, this is what you experience. So the night festival in Singapore today itself, we do have it most physical. It's the first one they've done in the last 2 years. We've incorporated a lot of digital content inside. And that digital content runs off the cloud. And the reason we could do that is because of the low latency and ability to harness the compute power that AWS provides. Now, you may ask yourself, why they have been talking about AWS? What about the rest of the other cloud service providers, right? Well, I think most importantly is the scalability. And this is important to us because when you're running actually a night festival with 55 experiences and having 75 partners in Singapore doing this, you want to be on the right platform. So before I just move off, what I would like to share also will be in terms of how we bring visitors digitally to participate. And this is where we come in with AR, VR, and MR. You will find that in Singapore, over the last 3 years, before COVID, this tech was not there. A lot of our museums overseas had this capability. Within the last 2 years, with COVID, we've actually incorporated and scaled up as well as adopted some of this tech. And let me give you an idea of what we have done, right? So we've actually have worked with, let me just go back. We actually have worked, can't do that, okay. We actually have worked, let me just share, we have actually have worked with schools, being able to use headsets, being able to touch your objects, a lot of the artifacts that we have for kids, and being able to do so such that they can actually manipulate them, learn from it, and within having that same experience both at the museums and offline over their phones. And this is important because it allows us to bring content, the experience directly into your phone. And one of the most important things we do in NHB, when we found out that mobile apps are cool, but digital services are key. So by having the ability on a browser, you actually expand the reach of having to bring that cloud capability, the applications and digital services directly into the phones and also the hands of our visitors. So let me just share with you at this point. So what's in it for us? Over the next 3 to 5 years, what do we plan to do better since we've actually have started 2 years ago? So let me share with you. Over the last 24 months, we have been with this journey with AWS. We were 40% today as compared to our competitors out there. Who are our competitors? Our friends in China, our friends in Dubai. There are very big museums out there, very digitalized museums, very high tech. We are still not there yet, but we aim to get there in the next 1.5 years. The reason being, what we are planning to do is to use how we can use the current type of capability in our pipeline to turbocharge this process. And what do we do then? We have various pillars or initiatives we do. First, we want to go digital. For those of you who have actually participated in some of our programs, you know that we have DigiMuse. DigiMuse is our innovation program that's for the heritage sector. We've actually done some calls, incorporated with a lot of members of public, small companies, startups, to actually co-create a lot of the innovative ideas with us. And we think that's very important. The next thing is we want to extend gamification. For those of you who like Pokemon, that's what we want to do. We want to associate ourselves and be able to get it to you to enjoy using the content and the experience that you get. And with that itself, we also means that we want to drive the ability to look at continuous engagement. Just like how when you go to a bank, and the bank says that, okay, sir, you got this amount of balance, perhaps you'll buy an insurance policy or such. We want to be able to do the same thing with personalization when you come to the museum or when you engage us. And that's very important because personalization means I can give you the right content that you want, the right experience that you have in place, and also understand your needs. But to do that, what we're going to go further now over the next 3 to 5 years is look at virtual worlds. Those of you who have gone into Facebook, you have heard of Meta. Our virtual worlds refer to how we can look at building games and using the gaming environment in a live-based scenario. That also means that we are looking at how we can build digital twins of environments that we can now use buildings or the artifacts or assets to model. And by the way, the most important thing out of this, we're not going to get adults to do it. The kids are very important. We have 119 schools out there today. How can we tap onto that capability and extend that opportunity to them? And also when integrating gamification in, how can we put all the other bits of pieces like what you do in a museum, wayfinding, content and such. So you will notice that when we go digital, today I can even now use headsets to be able to do this at home. Kids can even do it in their living room. And this is important because we have now changed the landscape in terms of how we use the cloud. By having edge compute, by being able to put things on the cloud very quickly with low latency capabilities like 5G, these are some of the new opportunities that come to us. Now, just to share a very quick important point, incentivization. Nobody does things for free, right? So what we looked at is as we go along, we do have a heritage ID, that's like your SingPass in the heritage world. It's tied to your SingPass. Importantly, with that personalization, we will know who you are. We can push the right content. We also are able to then engage and come up with new audiences. Kids, 15 and above who've got SingPass, those are our new customers. People who come to our museums on tours and getting to participate in activities. And one of the things that we really want to do is to be able to tell right stories and the content in activity spaces and even in your phone so that it keeps you engaged as you go along. Think like how we have spent a lot of time on TikTok or YouTube. We really want to have that level of eyeballs. Now, then I'm going to share with you what's the next pillar. You've guys heard of Phygital Experience 1.0. We're going to do it in 2.0. What's 2.0? 2.0 covers really looking at leveraging 5G connectivity, edge compute, you hear me saying that word again, and cloud-based capability to push content. When you go to Japan, when it's going to open up very soon, or you go to some of the other European cities, you see very nice billboards, digital media, but they all have servers behind. What we plan to do is to work with AWS to put that content up, but move those typical servers into the cloud. Importantly, that allows us to operate in a serverless environment, but to be able to use that low latency capability to give you that experience. And in do that, that gives us the ability to engage with very unique and immersive content, whether it's a large display, whether it's a wall, like a donor wall, or it can be a game. Importantly, focusing on AR, VR, and MR experiences and technologies as they grow is something that we think makes a lot of sense. At the same time, I just mentioned the last slide about assets. We have a lot of assets. 95% of our national collection sits in a vault. What we want to do is to be able to use the cloud and the current technologies are available, like 3D rendering, asset capabilities, being able to manipulate assets and give you the ability to do this virtually. And this is important because this allows us to bring that content to you better and gives you an awareness of what we have at Singapore. In terms of the future experience, for those of you who during COVID have sat on your couch and have looked on our laptops, you've gone through our virtual tours, right, like the Asian Civilization Museum. Today, we're going to graduate that experience to include 3D objects, chats, content, search in it. The reason why we're doing so is we do see that the market's opening up. Progressively, our foreign counterparts will be coming on board, and this allows us to be able to engage them before they come to Singapore. Those of you who also know what's XR, or even live conferences, you've done Zoom and Teams before, what we also would do with having the cloud capabilities to be able to have that experience in our museums so that you can have it with a backdrop, but having other people to participate virtually. And this is important because a lot of the work, like archaeological work, can be done, but you have to move away from traditionally doing it the way where people have to be on site. Can you get people to collaborate with you and work overseas together with your local folks? I think that's something that we want to be able to achieve. I did mention earlier, expanding on edge compute and low latency over 5G. We recently awarded a tender for the purpose of providing 5G in our museums. This is a private 5G network, and this allows us to do two things. One, spatial computing, being able to use the capabilities on the cloud to do so, rendering of some of the 3D assets, and also gamification. For those of you who are familiar with games, the 3D Real Engine is something that's quite useful, and that's what we want to use. So in terms of digital assets, to summarize, our assets that we have today is something that's important with us. We do have our data that we collect. We want to be able to, where we profile persons. We are working with our partners today to see how we can benefit out of this. And also, now, coming from a visitor standpoint, that's what I've just mentioned is all in the front, which you guys see. What about the back? If you look at the museums today, what we also want to do is to replicate what a manufacturing organization do with Industry 4.0. We want to be smart. We're going to make our museums behind smart by making sure that it runs better, more productive, and it's more digitized. And to do so, we are looking at building smart museums, automating it, using smart facilities management, being able to do predictive analytics, for example, machine learning, automation, sensors, IoT, the works. What Carl and Elaine have mentioned, and earlier, of course, reading the keynote speech, is how can we utilize the cloud to be able to power this? And this is important because with all those big data sets, it is important to be able to have it on tap. And at the same time, robotics. For those of you who know, when we first come to the museums, right, somebody likes to greet you. You have a visitor services officer. We now are progressively upgrading our visitor officers to be able to use robotics for that purpose. And this is to give them the ability to enjoy, do their work better, make it simpler, and also to address also the current manpower crunch that we get in Singapore. So maybe to give you an example, for those of you who have been to the Changi Chapel Museum, you most probably have met Tammy. Tammy is our little trial robot developed by NHB and GovTech. It really takes you around the whole experience and actually guides you around the museum. Importantly, with Tammy, what we have done is a successful pilot, which we now plan to just expand Tammy across all our museums and heritage institutions, all 10 of them. What does it benefit you? With Tammy itself, it shows that some of the activities that you have can be digitalized using simple robots connected to the cloud, connected to a sensor platform. You're able to use this and deploy it anywhere into your galleries. It can become smart galleries. So importantly, what we've done in the back end is to see how we can optimize the way how we work. Right? And to do so itself, what we don't do is to reinvent the wheel by trying to build this together. Through industry collaboration, tapping on what's available out there, this is how we actually just adapt and quickly deploy. So maybe to just give you a last perspective, I mentioned just now assets. What we also want to do is to see how we can revive and recreate our historical assets, right? Not just items. We are looking at buildings. We're looking at even translating in 2D images into digital stuff, and to be able to use the cloud for that purpose. And one of the things that you guys will know, you have heard this thing before, digital documentation. How can we store all this in large quantities, large data sets, very securely and safely on the cloud? And that's important because one of the things we are looking in terms of buildings is, rather than having too many buildings, how can we conserve? How we can also do restoration works. And to do this, the cloud allows us to do this by being able to put all that processing offline. So some of the things just to share, we've done things like 3D scanning to be able to recreate some of our assets, being able to use AI in generative design to design some of our stuff that we do in our museums. We also have the ability to reproduce artifacts and even models of buildings. And that's really your building. And then it's something that you like. If you look at what we've done, we can also create high-res 3D models that we can actually do in the future on the cloud so that we can share this information with the public as well as education institutions. So what's this whole thing about? What does it benefit Singapore? Importantly, with the digital arts and culture that is a field, we want to be able to translate and incorporate all this learning experience over the next 3 to 5 years so that when we look at our signature projects that are coming up, we'll be able to do very well. And Singapore can overtake its competition. One of the projects which I would encourage you to just check out is the Future Founders Memorial, and also to give an idea in terms of what's out there. So I come to the last part with this question that everybody tends to ask me. Why do you want to work with AWS, right? I'll tell you one thing. They share the same values and also vision with us. First, they're very obsessed with the customer like what we do. We're very obsessed with you as a visitor. Working backwards is what we do. We look at what the customer wants first, and then we decide on how to do it. And we also look at invent and simplify. Rather than build something, we invent something, we adapt, and we simplify it to be able to deliver the results. So as a quick takeaway for the team here, and also to give you an idea, what is it we have done? So we've actually used the government commercial cloud on AWS. We only use AWS. We also are now starting to look at deploying edge compute on Outposts. We also use Elemental for digital delivery for media. And we focus on 3D, Unreal, as well as Kendra for search. Well, one important thing I would like to give as a takeaway, why do you want to actually do this? And how can you do it successfully? I think there's 2 things that differs. A lot of people say they got very good staff, they got a big team of people. I have a very lean IT team. But I believe in one thing, tapping onto subject matter experts from AWS, because they have done it for many other people and I can learn from them. Two, be able to use their ProServe services so that they can augment my team, where my team is small but agile and experienced, to be able to provide that gap that I don't have. And with that, what I would like to do is always give you this last phrase that I normally use, and we have adopted now in NHB. COVID's in the rearview mirror. You need to think ahead. There's a new world order out there. If you're going to be successful, you need to digitalize. You need to think of new ways of doing it. You got to think big. You have to act fast and do it now, if you have not done so, but you have to start small. Start with pilots, trials, convince your management it's going to work, and then move forward. So for then, I'll just end here. Always check us out at nhb.gov.sg. My chatbots, Ellie and the rest will be happy to chat you through all the content that we have. With this, I would like to send you back to Elaine. There you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hardy. Now, let me ask you a simple question. Don't go yet. Don't go. How many of you want to go to the museum right away? Put up your hands. All of you? Yeah, you can go tomorrow. Finish the AWS Summit first. All right? Now, first of all, thank you for your time. Thank you, Hardy, for such an inspiring sharing. Thank you, Carl, for giving your thoughts about the trends and the tips. AWS is so glad to work with you, Hardy, and we look forward to many more chapters to help you with your journey, bringing your ideas and vision to reality. Now, together, we shall stimulate pride in our past and develop legacy into the future. With that, thank you very much, and more importantly, please give us your feedback, and you can scan the QR codes after for more information on cloud training and certification. With that, thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.